Spring is here. I've just seen primroses and peacock butterflies. I'm very pleased to be back in Bowyer's Wood. We're meeting up with Grace to see if she's caught anything in the small mammal traps. Then Jimmy's come down to see what's inside those owl boxes. Fingers crossed. Could it be tawny? Could it be barn? Could it be the big zero? But most exciting of all for the birder in me is the lesser spotted woodpecker, and we've got the country's leading expert here to tell us whether they're living in our wonderful woodland. Let's get going. I'm putting money on the lesser spot, maybe not the owls, maybe not the mammals. I love these. These are the new great gadget in my life. I've got a couple on the trees in my garden. This is a bioacoustic recorder. Essentially what we've got here is a box of batteries, a tiny microphone, a recording device and an SD card, so that everything that calls, sings, buzzes and squeaks in this woodland is recorded onto that card all day, all night, in the rain, in the wind. So we don't have to be out here. This is doing all of the hard work. Now, most of the hard work. You then have got to download all that information, and that's where the human part of the hard work comes into play. I'm pleased to say that Mark, who we've met before, who's interested in the one and only lesser spotted woodpecker, has been crunching the data. This is what I like to find in the wood. 3 experts in one of the sexiest birds in Britain, the lesser spotted woodpecker. Mark, we met before. Thanks very much for coming back. Ken. Linda. Lesser spots, knowledge par excellence. First thing is though, are they here, or are we just sat on a log and dreaming?
They're here.
They're
really
here.
exciting.
They're here.
We detected them on our song meter
So
the day after we met in February.
So
Really
good.
exciting stuff.
Bear in mind, when we looked at our records, there were distant records of the birds having been here, but
Yeah, there's one record about 30 years ago, wasn't
Yes.
there? And I put the odds at about 50-50. There were lots of calls in the 10 days after we met. And then 4 days ago, I came back and put the recorder up, the one you've just looked at there.
Yeah.
And there was very little calling, but lots and lots of drumming,
Right.
which is very interesting, that change over that time period.
Yeah.
And shall I just play a bit of the drumming?
Come on, let's hear
So
that.
this is from yesterday.
Let's talk a bit about drumming generally. Ken, tell us about woodpecker drumming. People often hear it even in cities if they're in parks where there are mature trees. So it's communication between the woodpeckers.
Yeah, it's their display. So other birds sing, woodpeckers drum. And it's amazing, really. It's incredibly loud. So for a little bird just banging around a piece of dead wood, the sound can carry for half a kilometre or something.
Yeah.
So it's really good. The males and females both do it. So they just establish their territories, pair up, and then they have this period now through February, March when they're making all the noise, and in maybe 10 days' time they'll all go really quiet. And at that point they settle down.
Excellent. And in terms of identifying which species is drumming, we've got 3 species of woodpecker in the UK, the green, the great spot and the lesser spotted. Let's concentrate on the great spot, which is one that most people are likely to hear because of their frequent garden visitors now. What's the difference between that and the lesser?
Right. Well, it's not always simple to tell because they're quite variable, but in general the lesser spot is much longer drum, just about 1.5 seconds. The great spot's only half a second or so. And the big thing about lesser spot is it's very flat and constant through the drum.
Right.
So the interval between the impulses, so they're making a drum by hitting the deadwood with their beak.
Yeah.
So you can see the impulses, and that interval stays the same right through the drum.
So it's regular.
It's regular. Whereas the great spot, it sounds as it has a flourish at the end.
Right.
And that's because it accelerates through the drum.
I see. Okay. Now, you've made it sound quite complicated. What we can say, Linda, is that when you hear it, it's quite noticeable. If you're fortunate enough to be able to hear both quite close together, they are distinctly different.
Yes, you can. Once you've heard them both, you'll definitely be able to tell which is which. Yes, so it's very exciting, that moment when you actually hear the lesser spot and it you know it's there.
Yeah.
And of course,
Let's have one more
sometimes-
listen.
Yeah, but even for us, hearing less spots.
Well, I know.
exciting, and we've been doing it for years.
Yeah, well, look,
So
I tell you what, again, let's qualify our excitement, because, you know, this is not a bird that sadly now many people are going to know. We're interested in it because when we were kids, they were a lot more common. They were part of our birding day if we went out, but they've declined greatly in number. And as a consequence of that, we're very excited that we've got them here. So again, what do we think about their population and what's been going on?
well, they've declined massively. They did very well during Dutch elm disease period. The numbers really shot up, and then they've just declined. So that was the 70s. That's like 50 years steady decline. So they've definitely declined. They're red listed. But what these recorders are showing is actually there are far more of them around than anybody realised. So in a lot of places, I call it slipping under the radar. Birders don't see them anymore. They assume they're not around. And putting recorders out in Sussex and other counties, we're just turning them up in places that people haven't seen them for years. Even this place.
Why is that? I mean, they are a very small bird. They're only about this big. They spend a lot of time at the tops of the trees rather than on your bird feeder. Or I mean, they're not very apparent. That's the first thing. But look, we all come equipped with our binoculars. Why aren't we seeing them?
Yeah, they don't make much noise. So but when you look at the data from these recorders, they might be running for like a week, and it'll have 10 minutes of lesser spot noise.
I was here for more than 2 hours yesterday morning, and lesser spots drummed for a total of 3 minutes in that entire period,
Right.
and didn't call at all.
So if you hadn't have been here for that 3 minutes,
Yeah.
there would have been a presumption that they're not here.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah.
So they've been drastically under-recorded. Isn't it great? We've got this new technology which is bringing them back into the fold, as
It's
it were.
absolutely fantastic. It's a bit of a cliche, but it really is game changing for lesser spots. So lots of people are now doing recording. We've been doing it in Sussex, we're doing it in Hampshire, Herefordshire, doing it, Derbyshire, and they're all finding lesser spots where they haven't been found for a long time. Which is brilliant.
What do you think that I mean, I know we're asking you to project ahead here, and scientists never like to do that, but what do you think the picture will be once we've got a more complete set of data?
There will be more. They'll have still declined a lot, I'm pretty sure of that. Maybe not as much as we thought. The other big thing is we'll be able to get some information on what habitats they're using, because we don't really know. We kind of make up the story. We know where we find them.
Yeah.
I think we're going to find them in different habitats, and that will really help on the conservation.
See, I live with them. I'm going to brag now. A drum in my garden. But then that's an artefact I'm very fortunate to live in the New Forest, which is one of their strongholds. And we've got lots of dead and dying beech because it's got increasingly wet. So perhaps it's rather like that Dutch elm situation. I've got all this standing dead timber around me. It's a magnet for these birds at this point in time. But it's very fortunate to have those sorts of encounters. The thing that strikes me is that there's such a narrow window for us to be able to engage with them. It needs to be a bright sunny morning, which isn't windy and raining. And you've got this period in March where you might hear them calling, you may hear them drumming, and then, as you say, they shut down and vanish for the entire spring and summer.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people were thinking, they detected these lesser spots early in the season, didn't hear them again, and thought, well, they were just passing birds. But I'm pretty sure they're actually breeding in these places, but just doing it very quietly.
Yeah.
And they have to be, because they would have disappeared long ago if they weren't breeding.
And Mark, thoughts about the decline? I mean, finger pointing was going to the great spots because they're a larger bird, and we know that they break into other hole nesting birds' nests and eat their young, everything from great tits and blue tits to willow tits and perhaps lesser spotted woodpeckers. But is the jury still out? What do we think?
This is Ken's subject, so I'll pass over to him. But it's, I think, Ken, you think it's more to do with climate change and peak caterpillar production?
Yeah. So we've looked at it quite carefully. It does seem one's going up, the other's going down. They're connected. Lots of stuff when I worked for RSPB, looking at correlations, and there wasn't much really. And we've looked in detail at the breeding success of lesser spots, and the real problem they're having is not producing enough chicks because of them on their food, and it's because they're out of sync with the spring food supply in woodlands.
Right.
So great spots are not innocent. They do predate a few nests, but the biggest cause of loss of potential productivity is the chicks dying in the nest because there's not enough food.
So to spell that out, Linda, spring's coming earlier, the caterpillars are coming earlier, the woodpeckers aren't shifting earlier. It's a sink issue, isn't it?
Some of it is, yes, because the lesser spots, like a lot of other birds, feed their chicks on moth caterpillars to start with, and the moth caterpillars have all gone before the lesser spot chicks have actually fledged. So they're having to switch diet to eat something else. And what we see with lesser spots is they're switching to eating aphids. And caterpillars are very quick to collect. The bird can fly to an oak tree, pick up some caterpillars, bring it back in a couple of minutes. Whereas if they're going collecting aphids, that takes them longer. But we've certainly seen from work we've done in the New Forest that aphids are the main bit of diet.
People are going to think, hold on a minute, an aphid is a tiny organism. How many aphids are they going to need to collect to feed a brood of, what, 6, up to 6, sometimes, I don't know, 7 or 8 in the past, youngsters?
Yeah, never quite 7 or 8, but 6.
6, was it
But,
6?
yeah, you see them coming back, and they've got a beak full of aphids, so there's probably at least 20, 30, maybe even 50 aphids. And in most years, it's taking like 20 minutes to get to that. Last year, they were coming back every 3 minutes with a beak full of aphids. So even though they were highly mismatched with spring, because remember last year was a very warm spring,
Yeah.
mismatch was really big. For some reason, which we don't really understand, there were really good aphid populations, and the birds could feed their young. So that's kind of good news that they can have high productivity in very warm years.
Yeah.
But it's back to invert food.
Yeah.
That's what they're eating.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, those conditions are not stable because we get wet springs, hot springs, so on and so forth. So they might have had a good year last year. Doesn't mean they're going to have a good year this year.
No, it'd be great if they did, but probably won't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, come on, let's have another blast
Well,
of that. What else have you got?
I'm going to play the call because that is really distinctive.
Okay.
So you can confuse the drumming, but this call is really distinctive. So that's the call. If you hear that, you know you've got lesser spot. You don't have to worry about, is it great spot or lesser spot drumming? That is so distinctive.
Yeah. Let's have it one more time.
One more time.
That
Here we go.
feasible.
Yep.
Shouty, aren't they?
Yeah.
Very
So in February, they were doing this quite a lot, at least by lesser spotted woodpecker standards. You know, I had 17 registrations in 10 days, more than one a day, amazing for a lesser spot. But in the last 5 days, there've only been 3 calls and 170 drumming registrations.
So they've switched from calling to drumming. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
What's going on there in terms of their communication? I mean, like you say, Ken, the drumming is incredibly, resonant. They don't just drum on any old branch they find. They choose a very specific branch. And what I see is that they go back to the same branch, and in fact the same piece of the same branch, where they've clearly recognised that if they drum there, they can generate the maximum volume, presumably. And it can carry over a great distance. So that's the second stage. I wonder what the calling was about earlier.
Yeah. There's a lot of work we could do on actually looking at all these recordings. It's an amazing data set now that we've got every day for months. And I think patterns will start to emerge that people really haven't picked up before.
Amazing.
And then you can start to try and understand what it's all about.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it, that we've got to our age and we're no longer reliant on, well, I started off with Boots binoculars, I think, in 1974 or something. And now we've got all of this technology, which is allowing us to learn a lot more quickly than we've ever been able to do before. But you've been helping with the development of this very specific app, which is looking for this one species amongst the cacophony of all of the sound that machine has captured. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so about 2 years ago, I thought maybe this would work for lesser spots, so let's try some recorders. So we bought one, and We put it up in the New Forest where there's a good population. So we put it up in known lesser spot territories right through from February through to May. And then I work with British Trust for Ornithology, who have a thing they call the acoustic pipeline, which they originally developed for identifying bats. They're now moving into bird song. And so I marked up, I think it was about 8,000 drums in the New Forest. Oh no, I've stepped forward too far. So first of all, it worked.
Right.
So we got
Recordings. Yeah.
of lesser spots in all those territories, so it was working. So then I went through and marked up about 8,000 drums and 600 calls and supplied them to the BTO, who then developed a classifier, an AI system for automatically identifying them. Because the thing is with this sort of recording is that you get so much data, you can't possibly listen to it all. You have to have some means of homing in on the important bits. So that's what the classifier does. It's not perfect.
So essentially it scans through all of the calls, all of the song, everything that's been recorded on there, looking very specifically for the drum of the lesser spot.
Yeah.
And it gives you the great spot as well. This is some results from here from the other day. It's quite hard to see in the light, but there's 73 lesser spot drums recorded there.
Wow.
Which were pretty much all correct.
As opposed to is it 2 there? I can say. Oh no, 7. Sorry.
The calls were only 3 of those were correct.
Were they?
So,
so there's still a degree of error.
Yeah.
But nevertheless.
Pretty amazing. Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And we are working, I've identified a load of the false positives, that comes up with false positives. And the next stage is to feed those into the classifier to train it not to identify them.
Yeah.
So, where this is going to be in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And we're talking about lesser spot here, but there are plenty of other birds which go under-recorded in our environment. I'm just thinking, again, going back to the New Forest where I live, hawfinch. I mean, hawfinches, you see them so infrequently, and then when you do see them, you've got them flying over with that characteristic flight call. But apart from that, you don't see them at all. But they've got to be there somewhere.
We've got a we've got a little plan for this summer. What I found last year in a mini trial was if you attach these passive recorders to cherry trees in June, cherry trees with lots of cherries on, the hawfinches come to them with their young. So family parties are coming to cherry trees in June. So I did that at 3 sites, and 2 of them had no records of hawfinch for the last 40 years, if ever. So we're going to do that at about 15 sites.
So hold on, there was no records for 40 years, but then you put your recorders out and found hawfinch.
Yeah, we heard the begging calls of juveniles, the calls of adults. There were definitely family parties in the trees. So we're going to do this more widely across Sussex this summer in June, both at sites, a few sites where we know there are hawfinches, mostly at sites where they've gone, they haven't been detected since the 90s. And fingers crossed, we might find that they're actually still around. And just looking at underneath cherry trees, you see quite a lot of split cherry stones.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you really that they might well be there. I'm not sure what else splits cherry stones like a hawfinch. I think I'm not quite certain about that, but I don't think grey squirrels do. So I think we may find, like for lesser spots, that we have more hawfinches than we thought. It'd be very exciting.
Fantastic stuff. Well, look, thanks so much for coming down to Bowyer's. We put a new bird on the map here, which is great. Well, and we should say as well, maybe we're not talking about one bird here. Quite clearly, if you've got drumming going on, there's males trying to attract the females, and there may be more than one bird drumming.
Yeah, indeed. And the fact that there isn't, if a male is unpaired, it'll just drum all the time. It's manic, and that's not happening. And that does suggest, to me at least, that there is a pair here.
Right.
So the challenge for the people here is to find the nest.
Oh, goodness me. Well, do you know, I can tell you 2 nest stories. Okay, one, playing football on Bitton Park Rec, must have been about, 12. And there was a poplar tree, and that had a lesser spots nest in, but it was very high. I'm going to say it was 20 metres up, And then, second story, 15, driving up someone's gravel driveway on my bike, delivering a newspaper. And as I went past the tree, there was this noise, and I thought that was bizarre. And then when I cycled back down, the noise kicked off again. And it was the crunching of the tyres on the gravel, which excited the young woodpeckers inside the nest to start calling. And it was about this high in a dead apple bough. And that was a lesser spot's
Wow.
nest
Yeah.
that I found.
Yeah.
Amazing.
God, I was so excited about that.
Fantastic. Yeah,
Delivering
yeah.
newspapers and you find a lesser spot. God, I got home, my parents didn't hear the last of that. Not for at least 3 days. And I went back, obviously, every day I was delivering the newspaper,
Yeah.
and they fledged.
So
which
what
was
date did they fledge?
Brilliant.
Oh, goodness me, I'd have to get my diary out. That would have to be, let me just sort of
It'd be
think.
quite interesting.
Yeah.
Climate change.
Yeah,
and
Lower
changes.
Upham it was. I know I could go back to that. I know exactly where that building is.
Well,
but
the nest won't be there anymore.
no, very sadly, probably not. But yeah, so I mean, they're hard to find, though, aren't they?
Yeah.
Until they're young and noisy.
Well,
And-
even in the New Forest, where we know there are about 300 territories,
Yeah,
the best year we've found 12 nests.
Yeah.
And that's with loads of people searching
yeah,
and open access they can get
Yeah.
there.
yeah. No, they're hard to find. There's no question of that. You need a bicycle. You need some boys delivering newspapers.
I'm going to give you this badge, which is our Woodpecker Network
That.
Spotted Woodpecker badge. And we give these to the volunteers on our study
Right.
who have found and monitored a lesser spotted woodpecker nest
My
as
goodness
part
me.
of the study.
Well, they must be quite rare then.
Yes, they're very precious.
But I mean, I have to say the nest that I found was probably sort of 50 years ago.
Ah, well.
Is that okay? Do I
as
still
it's you,
qualify?
it qualifies.
I mean,
No,
I've
it
got all
qualifies
I've got all the
anyway.
data still
As
As
long as you let us have the data.
in my I'll have it. It'll be in my diary. I was so excited about finding it, but look at that. God, that's fantastic, isn't it? Really. I know people that have these badges and they have the most crummy species on them. I saw someone the other day wearing one was a mallard. I thought, get it, really. Look at that.
Yeah.
Lesser spot.
This is the best.
Very happy now. I love these little trinkets like that. Oh, so good. Tune in next week and we'll see if Jimmy's found anything in the bird boxes.